Joining me now is political strategist Yaron Finkelstein, who served as advisor to Scott Morrison during his prime ministership. Yaron, it's hard to know where to start, actually, given all that's happened in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
But look, fundamentally, what Garth is saying is correct, but it's the message and the messenger at the moment, it seems.
Well, it's a good place to start. It's almost as if the messenger doesn't matter. Let's separate that for a moment. But if you were the Liberal Party, let's say you're a business, what are you trying to sell, and why should someone buy what you're trying to sell? And the party is going through a difficult period, and it can't answer those two questions at the moment. So it doesn't really matter who's trying to sell it. That makes it really difficult. So in the absence of that clarity, you're getting these type of games that we're seeing about people talking about all sorts of strange hybrid models of political parties. Who knows where things will be in 12 months' time, but there's no way that we are seeing a realistic sense of purpose for the party. It doesn't, at the moment, have something to sell. Now, that is difficult. So that's why we're seeing all this nonsense.
Well, and net zero is a really good place to further the conversation as well. Look, there is an ideology there, absolutely, but there is pure belief that this is not serving some of their communities. And I absolutely accept that from some National and Liberal members. This is real for them, and they're at the coalface of farmers and their communities that the transition to net zero is absolutely hurting. But my issue here is, okay, if they dump net zero, what else are they offering people? What are they offering that even Garth admitted half of the electorate, if you want to take in polling across, not seat-by-seat polling, but polling across the national average, it's 50-50. Let's say that's right, for example. Different age groups, you know, that changes. But what are you offering? And also, I mean, it doesn't matter what they're doing. Businesses, some of our biggest businesses are going ahead with their own net zero plans anyway. So they can drop this kind of headline, we support net zero, but what are they left with?
Well, this notion that you put forward about what are you selling is really, really important, because let's take net zero. Net zero is the aspiration in the voters' minds. They may not know a lot about what it means, but they think it means that we're doing something, and that gives them some sense of comfort because they do think there is a problem. So if you take that away, they're thinking, well, then we're not doing anything on a problem I do believe is occurring. Let's not talk about climate for a moment. Let's say it was something like blood pressure. You go to your doctor and your doctor has persuaded you that your blood pressure's too high, and you agree, you can see the numbers. You don't necessarily know what 135/90 means, but you go, no, it's too high. Now, that doctor then says, well, here's my prescription. Here's my way to fix it. I've got these really expensive pills you're going to have to take. You're going to have to be on a diet from tomorrow. You're going to have to do a huge exercise program. And you go, whoa, I agree my blood pressure's got to go down, but I'm not so sure about the solution. The Liberal Party should be that second opinion. And that is not to say that you shouldn't do anything about your blood pressure, because you think there is a problem. They should be the ones to say that version, that Labor Party prescription, there's a better way and we'll do it. And that's what they're not doing. They're focusing on that aspiration, which voters do support. They're not focusing on the problems of the transition, and there are plenty of them. We see that with deforestation. We see that with the high cost of energy. There are so many things the coalition could be focusing on and providing an alternative, but don't muck around with the aspiration, because voters are behind it.
Yeah, aspiration is how you're going to get young people back as well. You need to, you know, cultivate what you hope are future voters. Now, James Paterson, I think, he's one of the best communicators in the opposition at the moment. I thought his speech was excellent. I thought he made some really good points about the false prophets of Farage and this kind of collective public group therapy. It does need to end. They do need to start, you know, putting down some markers about where they're going to be at the next election. Would you add anything to what he had to say? I do note that he also talked about, you know, the problem with they need to be the better economic managers, but part of the problem is that they've only spoken to economic aspiration. They need to speak to other people, people's other aspirations in their lives. What did you make of all that?
Yeah, I think that's right. We are more complicated as voters than we have ever been. And to the point of ascribing an ideology to action on climate change, and it's nonsense. You know, you've got, for example, voters who voted no in the referendum, but were very clearly very supportive of increased expenditure on Medicare. How are you going to define their politics? We are complicated voters, and the same goes for a whole range of things, including immigration. The thing I'd add to the notion of the false prophet, technically, they are dealing with a very different opportunity in the UK and in the US. We have a preferential voting system and a compulsory voting system. So we're dealing with a totally different mechanical way of winning elections. And Farage has a, you know, yes, it's populist, but he's dealing with a very different system. So I think Australian politicians who are looking at that need to understand how you win elections. And it's very different to what happens in the UK.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yaron, always good to talk to you. We'll check in next week.
Sounds good, Laura.